onto this computer. Okay, so I have some items that I've listed, and I'm thinking that we can have this in two parts, part 1 and part 2. Part 1 being about marking and things like that, questions that might come up that are related, and then part 2 about preparations for changes that are due for next year in teaching. And I kind of, oh, yes. So, oh, hi, Susanna, that's lovely to see you. Angeliki, hi. And Melissa, great, excellent. Nice to see everyone. Okay, so basically the items that I have, this is where I slowed down a little bit, bear with me. This is kind of, can you see? I think it should be sharing. Right, so these are the items I've got listed. We've had quite a few changes. It's been, I don't know, it's kind of between each meeting there seems to be further changes that are happening. So we're kind of living in a very fast-paced world at the moment, as we all know. Part 1, marking, part 2, teaching for next year. So part 1, we're putting together, you saw the infogram for students. We're putting that, something like that for the team together, so that you can have links, and if there are any queries that you have, you can consult with that document when it's finalized, and then hopefully that will address some queries without you needing to necessarily sort of think of emailing people. But should you need to email, of course you can. So, so I'm very grateful to Georgia and to Carolina, who are going to, well, we've got a sort of rubric at the moment, and we're working with that table that we've got to put it into the infogram, okay? And I'll wait on Carolina, there's still some time, so that's okay. We have got students who are starting to panic with deadlines approaching, and so we have got an item about MITCircs, which I'll come to. But are there any queries about marking? Let me see. Before you ask, on the shared portal, do you all have access to the SharePoint? Is there anyone who does not?
Not sure I know what SharePoint is, being new to this, but we can talk about that separately.
Okay, so also I will make a note of that. Is there anyone else who's not familiar with or not confident with the SharePoint?
I'm afraid I'm not either.
Okay, well, please do say it. There's nothing. Sorry?
I'm sometimes finding it hard to access
Hi, Carrie.
SharePoint. Hi.
Okay.
Hi.
Sorry, I didn't
sometimes
see you join. Okay.
Sometimes tricky to access SharePoint or find things on it. I struggle with it sometimes. So.
I mean, I think that it is a very strange platform, and sometimes you're going back and forth before you arrive, and so that sometimes is a bit disconcerting because it takes a while. But on the flowchart that we're putting together, or the infogram, however you want to call it, there are links embedded. So I'm hoping that will help.
That really
helps. Also, I can share the SharePoint with you and show that I have started to populate SharePoint. Oh, this is where I start to slow down. Sorry. I have to find myself in terms of trying to find where I'm sharing from. If I stop sharing, so those are the items you're seeing what we're covering, right? And if I share with you, hopefully, bear with me. Thank you for your patience. I'm just trying to see where I'm at. Might be, I don't suppose I can sort of navigate through the drive when I'm not on the right page. So let me just get on there. Student references, marking. Okay, so I will share just to show you where you will find it. On SharePoint, we have different folders for different years that we've sort of academic years, that is. And in the folder for 1920, then I can just bear with, gosh, this is, And if this takes too long, I'll just talk it through. So just trying to see if I can find the way of showing you the right page view. I'm sure it's there. Sometimes it's my vision more than anything else, I think. I'm not really sure what you can see now. I think you're seeing the MIT-CERCS report, are you?
We're not seeing anything, Muna.
Ah, okay. Well, that could explain. Oh, share screen 2. Now, if I share screen 2, which is kind of, what can you see right now?
We can see, or at least I can see your
Academic
your-
area?
yeah, your academic
Oh,
area.
thank God. Okay, right. So that's what I'm trying to show you. When you arrive on the SharePoint, you'll see these folders. Now this is under, if I can go back. So when you come into the education studies, I'm not going to talk through how you get here, okay? But if you need that, I'm happy to do that separately. 1920 academic year, you click in, and it's recording all of this, so that should help, I hope. I've put in something new, and when something's new, it sort of has this sort of crown or spotlight on it. And I put something in here for marking, which you'll see. There's something on categorical marking and some other documents that have been shared previously that I've also put up there. Okay. And I've also populated things here for moderate exam boards. So we'll have things that we need documents for the exam boards, moderation forms. And I'm trying to sort of make this a bit more clear and accessible so that module conveners can find these things, okay? But that's essentially where you'll find documents that you'll need. And I'll see if working with Carolina, maybe on the flow chart, we'll just put a link into those pages for module conveners just for convenience if it helps. But it should work. And then the plagiarism procedures also here. And while I've got it here, if I'm skipping ahead a little bit from marking, but as you're marking, if there are students who you find have reasons for you to suspect the integrity of their work, we have got different levels of severity of concern, if you like, from informal to formal concerns that we might respond to. So informally, it might be a case of poor referencing, and it doesn't look deliberate, but rather, you know, those who are more experienced and familiar will know that we're trying to really support students and not to be overly punitive, but at the same time, we want to be clear with students if they aren't doing things correctly and that aren't in their own best interests. So informally, where possible, we try to have meetings with students, and that has a process where you have to send a communication to the student and invite them to meet to discuss, and it has to be recorded. The informal meeting has to be recorded, right, in terms of what you have shared with the student. So that would be an informal meeting. However, if the student has a previous record, this is where you will look on the site and see from February, for example, there are some students listed here where they've had some issues and there have been some meetings, informal or formal. So the formal ones are noted here as serious misconducts, and the informal are minor misconducts, right? And if it's a minor, please could you put in the grade that they have gained or achieved for that minor offense. So it might be that you would fail them and give them a grade within that sort of band that's a condonable range, but you still think that they should have an informal meeting to help them with, and you have to give the reasons here, you know, poor referencing. Okay, so as much information as we have is really, really helpful, because when there's a second offence, should that happen, hopefully not, but occasionally it does, then a minor offence can't be repeated. It would suggest that the student hasn't really learnt, and so it might lead to a more serious offence because of the fact that they've already got a bit of a record that's been established here. Okay, so these all have to be put up there and recorded, and I need to go through them, and then they're sent, well, they're filtered through and worked alongside with Academic Office, because there's a central database that they extract this information from, especially when it comes to serious offences, so-called, which means that it's another level and a disciplinary officer needs to be involved. And those cases, I need to look through the work to confirm that we need to arrange a meeting. If you find that you have a student who you believe warrants a serious notification or note for their misconduct, you would please be advised to send me a copy of the Turnitin version of that assignment so that I can look through the assignment, saving me, I would be grateful, saving me the time of having to go through modules on Moodle and going through different assignments to find out the assignment that in question. So it's really helpful to speed up the process, to send an attachment with the assignment that has the Turnitin version, so all the sort of similarities are flagged. And if I'm saying something that doesn't make sense, ask and we can discuss if it's brief, or discuss later if you want further clarification. So if you can send me the attached assignment, then I need to look through that, and then I need to flag up all the serious misconducts with the Academic Office so that we can arrange for disciplinary officers to be available and to carry out those meetings with the students before the exam board. So that operation happens behind the scenes, as it were, or alongside all the moderation that, you know, processes and that once done. And please make sure that if you have got an assignment and it is flagged up that you're not a module convener, to please refer to the module convener first, and then the module convener can flag it up with me. Okay, that way it sort of hopefully helps the process. So I've already sort of tried to touch on plagiarism, but all of this record, you know, especially if you've got second year students, you can go further back if need be to 1819, and hopefully that helps. Okay, shall I move out of this one and go back to, so we've got the level 1 template meeting. There's a document here. So dear, right, that letter needs to go out. Georgia, do you want to say anything about the letters?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, just about now, yeah.
So just that you'd copy me in when you send it to the student so that I know that you're having a level 1 meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, that's about it, really.
And so this will be completed by module convener.
Yeah.
And sent out to the student. And at that meeting, ideally, the module convener will carry out the informal meeting. But obviously, if you're a seminar tutor for those modules that's slightly bigger, then it's very important, and I'm sure you will discuss with the module convener the concerns that you have. So ideally, the module convener can carry out those informal meetings. in an informed way. Excuse me. And then, of course, if there's need to follow it up with AGTs, etc., then we, you know, then that's something, if that's part of the discussion that ensues with the student, then at least we have a record also of what has been suggested, and to see that the AGT can follow up afterwards if need be. Right. And if you are wanting to familiarize yourself with the plagiarism procedures, it's there. Okay. All right. Are we okay with that so far? So if I try to stop sharing, and I can see you again, that's nice. Okay, so moderation procedures. I have been following up on from external examiners' comments. I've been looking at that document again, and I've tweaked it so that, excuse me, so that we can put in how many assignments per grade band feature within the whole batch, as it were, because that was something the external examiners said they'd appreciate knowing, because they only get a snapshot and they want to have a clearer overview. So in addition to the sum total of how many assignments you've had, then there's a little bit there that I've been trying to tweak with. And I just needed clarification, Carrie, on the top band. We're going from 82, and then what are the 90s like? Because do you remember we had that conversation about the higher band mark?
We did. Yeah, we did. At the moment, sorry, it's just it's maths, you know.
No, that's okay. Hi, Atticus.
Say hi to everybody.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. It's all you.
Hi.
It's okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Can you actually get Daddy to look at that? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Go.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Off you go, darling. Bye.
Bye.
It's all great. We love it.
Okay.
Anyway,
Sorry.
sorry. So the grade bands that we were given just had the problem that was that everyone was complaining about is not having 82, 85, 88.
Yes.
And the categorical marking grade bands for the master's level for postgrad do include those finer grained choices, and so hopefully we are able to use those for the undergrad levels.
Okay, so we will have. Hopefully.
We should. Well, there hasn't been any official yes, that's okay,
Right.
or no, you shouldn't. But in my understanding across the university, people are sort of have adapted what psychology used for the pilot, and you know, it's only really those very high and very low grades that have changed from the original what psychology did. And no one seems to mind too much as long as we can make a sound argument for why we think we need those grades. And we've done that, I think, through the assessment feedback working group, which is reported back to LTQ, GEC, whatever. But I don't know, that's the working group is on hold at the moment.
Yeah.
I don't
So
know
if
what
I show you what I've been trying to do, hopefully that kind of helps. I'm right. Trying to get a bit quicker at this, but bear with me. So this is, can you see, hopefully you're seeing, are you seeing the items that we're discussing?
we're seeing a form.
Oh, you see the form. Okay, can you see the box of the marks there?
Yes.
Okay, so that was the one that I was trying to,
Right,
I
okay, yeah.
I can't quite do the wizardry of you know, whiteboard type stuff, but so that band was something that I wasn't quite clear about.
It's still, I think it's right to be unclear about it, and I'm not quite sure if we can finally finalize it. I would definitely run it by Joe, Pete, before you make it in a formal form. And if possible, I'd say to avoid being hostage to fortune, I would just make it broader than that and just say fail and below, and then 50s, 60s, you know, because
I started that way, but I just wondered if we had to keep it within the categorical. So that's
I don't know.
helpful.
I don't even know that
Yeah.
we need to provide that. We just really, I mean, in the past, we've just had the spread of grades, right?
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
don't see, I mean, also, it's quite a pain if you've got particularly large groups to have to count through and work out how many. But if you just show the spread, that's easier. Unless there's a specific requirement that the university has introduced, then I'd say I'd go for a simpler version. But I'm happy, if you ping it to me, I'm happy to make some suggestions or comments on it based on what I know other programs are doing.
Okay,
and I think,
great. But
yeah,
that was
and-
the only additional thing that I thought would be worth adding to the moderation form.
I mean, I think it would be interesting to see it, but I think it makes quite a lot of extra work for people. And also, the other thing is, do you just do the total grade? Because obviously some of us have got components and, you know, it's tricky to see how to manage it. But anyway, if you want to ping it to me, I'm happy to give you some comments based on what I know other programs are doing.
That's fine. Is
and
there
Sue
anything
as
anyone
well.
else wants to add to that before I move on? Because that's the moderation form for module conveners. And this is basically trying to get as much info for external so that they can see how we moderate. And in moderation, we are taking a sample. And again, the information is on the SharePoint, which you'll have a link to, and you can find a way to seeing in the folders that with the large modules, it's about 10% of the overall that we look at, and we try to make sure that the feedback and the grades correspond according to the assessment criteria. Externals like to see some of the conversations that are had. So I would just urge, because of this ongoing discussion that we've had about how can we communicate to our externals that the process of moderation doesn't have as much detailed discussion as second marking, for example. So I would just say, if you have communicated in emails between you about agreeing that the representation is fair and in keeping with the assessment criteria, that you do just that if you are in that moderation process and you include it in there. And that module conveners, thanks Carrie, I've seen your hand. So module conveners can also add their comments about the sort of general view of the marks and for this sort of submission round, as it were. So as module convener, you can give a general comment about what they were, you know, like, and in terms of moderating, that we're trying to give some information, but mindful of the fact that it's a moderation process. Carrie.
Yes, thank you. Just briefly to say that I think Sue Smedley is on annual leave today.
Yes,
she's not
yeah.
But she said that she had, because I asked her as part of the assessment feedback working group, she said that she's got a bit more insight into what the other programs do in the way of recording conversations that the external examiners. So she may have some samples of the kind of language that's being used or the level of detail.
That would be very helpful. Good. So I might invite her to just, if she has an example, to put that up on SharePoint, so that if in the process of moderation, if module conveners and tutors in the larger modules want to confer with each other and then agree, because obviously there has to be agreement in terms of what you're presenting to the externals. So then we can look at SharePoint, hopefully with some examples of the kinds of things that other colleagues have put on their forms. I think the process is, you know, it is trying to just avoid saying agreed. That's the thing that externals were finding for them frustrating, because it didn't give them much clarity in terms of how the process had worked.
I don't know if you're seeing the chat, but Susanna's asking a good question about...
sorry, I better stop sharing and then I can probably see the chat.
Yes, but
okay,
I don't know.
Thank you. No, that's very helpful. You tell me.
What she said, I don't want to, it's her voice there on the thing.
Sorry, I'm just asking, do we do this for year one? I didn't want to interrupt.
Moderation for modules?
Yes.
Yes, but for the externals, no. We don't need to do anything.
We don't need to actually upload the form.
No, because they won't see level 4. So if you are, and that's a very good point, especially for colleagues who are new to the program and been supporting modules. So level 4, the externals will not be reviewing. It's just level 5 and 6, so that's second and third year. Level 4, we still, as a matter of quality and assurance, have the moderation process, but it might be worthwhile in that case, and if you are happy, we can, for our own records, have a folder for level 4, where we put in, should anyone ask for information in future, we'll be ahead of the game. So, hi Dorothy, I didn't see you there, sorry. Samson,
Hello, sorry.
Helen,
Yes.
Wolfgang, sorry, I didn't see people because I was so busy looking at documents. So is that something that you would find helpful? It might be a good way to sort of just be ahead of the game, I think, if we have level 4, if module conveners for level 4 could just put those moderation forms up on SharePoint. So I'll create a folder for level 4. Does that make sense?
Mona, just
I think you're wondering to ask a question. Like you have that look about you. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering if that would be helpful though, because I feel like the plagiarism information might be more helpful for documenting it. But I wonder if the moderation itself for level 4 would be something that we need to document that extensively. Because in the past we seem to have worked it out between us.
Yeah, I think it's worth just noting that we do need to moderate at all levels. We do this process for the examiners. I'll check on that for level 4. I'll see what we haven't done it before. I think maybe correct me if I'm wrong.
In the past, we used to moderate everything, but just keep a record of the email exchange we had with the moderators, which seems to be sufficient for the purpose.
I think for this, and maybe because of all the things that are going on at the moment, and more information to ensue about that shortly, but yeah, maybe we'll just carry on doing what we've done in the past. The only trouble with that is if, you know, module conveners then need to keep a record of these things, and if it's not sent somewhere we all see it, if someone else needs to see it, then we just need to rely on one another to share that information as and when. But okay, that's fine. So level 5 and 6, we need to fill in that process and make sure that the external examiner's Moodle site, so on Moodle we're all familiar, I think, module conveners, that the external examiners have a Moodle site dedicated to them, and all module conveners will then need to upload the information. And what you need to upload is also going to be on that infogram that was mentioned at the start. And information is also on the SharePoint. So the information sheet for your module, and the sample of the work, the module handbook, and the moderation form. So that's sort of 4 documents that you need to make sure you've got, or four points to remember about uploading information for externals. Okay. Is that okay so far for marking and moderation? So please do work with your module conveners who should, you know, be liaising with you anyway in terms of how marking's going and getting the moderation underway and prepared for confirming marks. In terms of confirming marks, you need to, module conveners, and a lot of this is bearing on the module conveners, but of course those supporting with the teaching are going to be very valuable to speeding up that, or making sure that it's a smooth process, and we can get the marks to the office in time for the pre-exam board. And we do have dates that have been confirmed by Kelly. I think Kelly sent an email to everyone about the changed dates for confirming marks. Do you all have that? It went out to everybody. Do you all have it?
Total silence, I'm not aware of it.
Okay. I can see there are some questions in the chat. If you go to the exam board, you might find that there are some information there for the exam board. Did you find that? I'm scrolling through. I'm a bit delayed in my response. Wolfgang, did you find it?
I didn't find the form, but I didn't look in under the exam board. Is it in the documents for external examiner and exam board?
Yes.
Oh, that looks at it. Okay.
Okay. So I debated where to put these documents and where to make it sort of more visible. Previously, it was all under the exam boards, and so I'm still wondering. Clearly, it's not that easy to find. So maybe.
Oh yeah, I found it. Yeah, yeah. Maybe you could
Okay.
also put a copy in the moderation marking.
Yes, I'll do
folder.
that.
That's where
Yeah.
I looked first. But I found
Okay.
it. Thank you.
Yeah, I did sort of play with the notion of having it in two places, and would that confuse? But I'll do that as well. I think as long as we find them, that's the main thing.
It just
great.
gets problematic when you make revisions, and then you have to
Sure.
make sure that they get updated in all the different places where you put it.
No, I understand. Or just having access to the form is really just because if you're updating, then it's your version you're updating,
Sure.
and then you upload it to the Moodle site for external examiners.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, this is all part of the nitty-gritty of trying to get everything done in time. Kelly did send an email with a calendar showing the different the dates. If it would help, I'm a bit wary to show you this one because it might sort of send you off in a bit of a tizzy spin and give you a headache. But if you would like, I will do my best to. Is that helpful, or do you have the dates?
It would be helpful, please.
Okay.
I need to know what I'm looking for.
All right. So there's a version. Can you see a calendar here?
I have not seen it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll send it again. I think I'm pretty sure that Kelly did send it to everyone, but I'll send it out again. There's no harm in that. So as Georgia is here, why don't you talk us through the dates then? Spring this on you. Can you see the calendar, everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So Georgia.
Wait, let me go on to my one because I need to click back and forth.
Because what we have are, we've got submission date of 21st for the main submission date, 20 for all assignments, with the exception of the dissertation, which is the 27th, right?
Yeah.
And then we have another module, the Understanding Education module. So if you're involved with Understanding Education Year 1, then that's on the 9th of June, right? So
Yeah.
Mark's confirmation, and I'm looking at the month of July. Do I need to look at June? I don't think so, do I?
Hold on.
Let's just
Where's the
see.
calendar?
Pre-board 23rd I have here. Post date is 12th of June.
Mm-hmm.
So the post date is when the marks are revealed.
Yes.
And then we have a pre-board for year 1. So all module conveners for year 1, 23rd of June. And then the Understanding Education, I know Shirley couldn't be at this meeting, and Sue, as Carrie's mentioned, is on leave. So Understanding Education, if you're supporting that module, then that's the post, is it the post date? It would be, wouldn't it, of the 30th of June, right? So we need to get the marking done before the post date, obviously. And then education.
Mona, can I just say, we're not expecting Understanding to go to the level 3 to 4 board.
Yes.
It's going to go to the level 5 to 6 board.
Yes, that's right, because it's a later submission date. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a later submission date, I didn't get to that point yet, but you're right to bring it up. That it won't be at the year 1 exam board, it will be at the year 2 exam board to allow moderation processes and confirmations and so on. So that's the only exception. All other year 1 modules will be due to be ready for that pre-board. So the marks need to be confirmed. you want to talk it through? Because I'm doing a lot of the talking. I don't mind you doing some talking.
I'm still trying to find the calendar on my end because I need to go back and forth. But I think.
Do you want the other view of it?
Where's the other? Yeah, maybe.
Okay. So if we go into this view and stop sharing.
I can't find
This is another version. Can you see this?
Right, easier.
Is this easier?
Yes.
All right. Georgia, is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah, this one's fine.
Okay, so we've got Mark's confirmation, 3rd of July.
Can you
And then the pre-board is the
Level 4. Yeah.
level 4.
Right. So yeah. So I need to have.
You better talk through this because this one. Yeah, go on.
So the post date will be for level 4.
Oh, I understand why it's got confused me because that Mark's confirmation is for A and P board, isn't it?
What for the yeah.
Apologies, everyone. So it's not our Mark's confirmation to you. It's the one for the A and P board, isn't it?
Yeah. So Mark's confirmation.
Because that wasn't put on the calendar when we were going through it. That's what we raised. Okay, go on. Sorry.
So yeah. So the post date for majority of level 4s minus understanding should be the 12th of June.
Yeah.
So I'll need marks by then to start entering for the pre-board on the 23rd. And then we'll have the exam board, is it on the 1st of July? And I'll need to have those marks confirmed for A and P 2 days later for the 3rd of July.
Right. So what we didn't have, what Kelly hadn't put in there was the education marks confirmation to the office. And so if you could just confirm that again for us, it's the 12th. It will have to be before or on the 12th, by the 12th, right?
Well, the 12th of June is the post date that it should go out to students. So that's when, I mean, I should be start pulling marks because I'll have a week to pull marks and then enter them for the pre-board on the 23rd. And then, but in between this, I'll be doing sports coaching as well. So this is where it's going to get.
So what the appeal is to try and get as much support to have the marking finished so that marks can be confirmed by module conveners to the office.
But this is if majority of students submit on time, because if you take mid-circs into account, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's on the discussion, isn't it?
Yeah, and then the majority won't cut. If let's say half of the students have mid-circs, then majority will be going to the level 5 and 6 board. They won't be coming to level 4 board. So
yeah, it's nice and complicated. What we had discussed in the past was the post date is 1 for the student. So ideally, all those marks will have been inputted. What we won't necessarily have, I suppose, are the mid-circs marks, but certainly for those who've submitted on time, we should have the marks ready by the 12th.
Yeah.
Okay. The mid-circs is another bag of fun. So I mean, the main point is to try and do our best to get all those that have submitted on time marked and confirmed by the 12th. So if everyone is pulling together, then that's really what we're trying to encourage. If there are issues, that you just please flag them up with module conveners, and module conveners can flag them up to heads of year and to myself. So if there are any issues that come up, please don't, stew about it or anything. Just let us know, each other know, so we can sort of make sure that we don't come a cropper. Okay. Now mid-circs, the closer we get to the deadline, the bigger the list becomes with the MITCircs report. So we do anticipate, certainly for dissertation supervisors, that there are quite a number, as Georgia and I were having a conversation earlier about this, quite a number of students in year 3 are applying.
I can just give a rough number. So,
Okay.
well, this is the last time that I counted. So this was last week before the students all went mad. But for dissertation, there were 34. I think it's increased by at least 10 now. So in the last couple days. And I don't know the names, but I can say the codes and then you guys can decide if it's yours. 102, C102 has quite a few.
Oh, you mean the module codes? I was
sorry.
beginning to panic. I thought you were going to give us student codes or something.
No, the module codes.
Right, module.
No, I don't even know them.
So 102, is that Melissa's researching social? Is that a C code?
Yeah, C code.
Okay,
C102.
so that's Melissa's, I think. I can't see the chat, I'm afraid, unless I stop sharing. So you carry on. Is this helpful for you guys? Can I just, before you do that, I know I do talk a lot, but that's my prerogative, I suppose. I have to sometimes. If you're a dissertation supervisor, can you make sure that if your student has not submitted, you have the benefit of not having anonymous submissions? So you will see your student's name, and of course, I'm sure you will follow up and see why they haven't submitted, and if they, or first, before that, check the MITCircs report and see if they're on that MITCircs report, then you can anticipate that they'll be handing it in later. But if there's any doubts or any queries, that you perhaps contact your students to see if they have applied for MITCircs. I think what we might do, Georgia, is, if you wouldn't mind, if we just flag up maybe on the 21st, the latest MITCircs report at that point, so that dissertation supervisors can see and module committees can see. For all of them. I mean, I think on the 21st, if we have a look at the latest, we can all access the MITCircs report. Do we all realize that?
Yeah, you can access it. It's the filtering part that gets people.
You need to download the document. So if you go into, would it be helpful for me to do that, to demonstrate that while you read out the codes? Am I missing anything in the chat? Okay, so let me try.
In the chat.
No, okay, so let me just see if I can find, I did find the MITCircs earlier.
Oh yeah, so I'll read out the codes for the ones that have the most. So C102, C725, N201, N825, N8.
Yeah, Wolfgang, that's your one, isn't it? 201.
Yes.
Research methods.
Yep.
Yeah, Wolfgang, research methods has a lot. I don't know why, but yeah, for some reason a lot of your students are applying for MITCircs for research methods.
Okay, and that is, you're talking about the first assignment, or you're talking about the second assignment?
This is the second for the 21st.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, that's possible because a lot of time they spend on the presentation, so therefore they felt pressed for time to do the proposal.
Okay.
Or not too surprising.
N825, Mona, I don't know, is that yours, Mona?
N825 is mine placement, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably because of the placement thing, so a lot of them
there are exceptional circumstances with that module, yeah.
Yeah, N829.
Bless you.
Sorry. N830.
830, that's rings a bell.
And X928. I think it's multiculturalism.
9 to 8 is SIE.
9 to 8 is special inclusive education.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's quite a few there, and then the others, the dissertation. There are the other modules do have mid-sex, but not to the level that these modules do.
Okay.
But it could change within by today or tomorrow.
I don't know if you can see what I'm sharing right now. Can you see the mid-sex report?
Yeah.
Okay, so what you need to do when you do get to the admin area on SharePoint, which we will provide a link for just to make it less complicated, and this is particularly for module conveners, is that you can see, when you download it, don't filter it while it's on the SharePoint. Please download the document and filter it so that then you can go through these students and the modules. Unfortunately, they're not sort of in year groups, so I think that might be another way of trying to filter it, but I'm trying to see how. I don't see how it's possible.
You'd have to filter the module code, then you'd be able to get it by, but you wouldn't be able to do it by year group. It'll just be module code.
I see. Okay, well, I won't spend time doing that right now, but you can see that you can filter it down to our program, and then maybe then find the code that's relevant for you. So then you can, so if we want to filter that further, I've just unfiltered it, haven't I? So we could look at, no, let's look at the dissertations for want of a X, and then it's 301. If we do that, then you'll see the students come up, right? So if you've got a dissertation student, and I've just chosen this because I know we've got colleagues who are here who are predominantly supporting on this module. If your students are appearing on here, then you'll see the reasons, and I see one of mine's there as well. Oh dear, okay, so that's, yeah. Is that helpful? One certain way of finding this is by going through the flowchart or the infogram that we're putting together that will have a link. That's one way of doing it. The other is, I think, Georgie, you did actually send an email about mid-sex and how to get to it.
I did? When did I do that?
Some time ago, maybe.
Oh,
but
maybe.
yeah, I mean, if I stop sharing now and I share another screen, which would be, this is a lot of information. I'm a bit mindful of this, but if it's getting too much, you can just unmute and say so. I don't mind. So if I go back, can you see education admin area that was? Can we all see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I can see it's framed, but it's always nice to know that it's all right. So I'm going back so that you can see how I got into it. I went through the portal, staff portal, didn't I? And I seem to be on SharePoint, so that's not what I was looking for. Okay, that's the better one. All right. So when you go into the staff portal, scroll down to the bottom to Roehampton Business Intelligence. Ironic that that sounds, but anyway. So go into all staff, right? When you are in all staff.
No, Mona, it's the other one. Oh, you could have gone through the other way, but it's fine, go on.
Can I go? Well, I thought I could go through departmental administration.
Yeah, no, you can go on.
Okay, so go through departmental administration, and this is being recorded with all my delays with sharing and everything, but departmental administration, you can see mitigating circumstances. If you click on that, you scroll down to MITCIRC's report 2019. And that brings up, it generates the document which you can download once it loads up. If you go into Actions and you export Excel, then I won't do it now because I've already done it. And can you see it's downloaded at the bottom? And then you can open that and do the filtering that I was doing just previously. Is that helpful? I hope it kind of gives you an idea of the process anyway, and it's recorded now. So I can send you a recording of this as a YouTube link like we do for our students, if you don't mind, in an email. And then you can sort of recap for yourselves anything that you didn't quite capture while we were talking or discussing through processes. Okay, so that's MITCircs. And that is a live document, isn't it, Georgia? So it'll be updated.
Yes, it's updated like every minute or something.
Well, at this moment, it probably is on a minute-by-minute basis, isn't it, as the 21st approaches. So there are quite a few things to remember. I appreciate there's a lot of information. Well, that's really good news, Richard. Sorry, I've just seen your message that people are on track to submit. Sue, your question was for primary ed. I think in that MITCircs document, you'll find that all the programs are listed, and you can, once you download it, you can filter it. So hopefully that should help you with your query.
No, it's not a query. It's just that we've had them all in, and only 30 submitted, and all the rest of the whole cohort are going through the MITCircs.
Yes.
So we're all finding our Junes taken up now.
Oh yes, yeah, and it appears that with resubmissions and deferrals and so on, that it'll be quite a summer of activity, because we've just been discussing this morning, Georgia and myself, about when, and this is probably a good time to discuss that, because we have usually by this point got a date for our resubmissions for failed assignments. But that's still on hold, and so we could suggest a date for resubmissions, and looking at the calendar and when all the boards are, and making sure that we can try and get things done in time. We've got a provisional date that we would we sort of thought, and I want to put it to colleagues here, about the 7th of August. But so just before I get to the resubmission date, possible date, there are going to be many students who will feel that the way that the regulations have been relaxed about MITCircs gives them an opportunity to cope with all the things that they're coping with. And so there will be an increase. And we knew that for dissertations, for example, that there would be a fair number of students who might submit for mitigating circumstances, but I think given the context, we're going to see a greater number. And I think you'll find that, Melissa, I'm distracted because you're having a chuckle. All right. So maybe you can share at the end or something. But so there are lots of potential, like Sue says, for primary ed, for our program to have students who are not going to submit on the 21st. But that MITCircs report will certainly give us a way of gauging. And I know you went through a roll call of modules, but if we now know how to access that, maybe that's the best way, because you've sort of gone through the main ones that have got the most, I think. But please, if module conveners can check, then that would be very helpful. And if dissertation supervisors also would like to check for their students, just to make sure, that would be also very helpful. In terms of resubmission dates, there is an August Awards and Progression Board. And usually under normal circumstances, we have a July date for our resubmissions for failed modules in the spring. But we will probably, and there hasn't yet been given a date for a September board, we'll probably have another board, because the A&P board for this exam board, if I've still got you on board with me in terms of what I'm saying, is going to be in August. So our resubmission date will need to account for another board, which will most likely be, I'm anticipating, in September. The issue that Georgia and I and other colleagues will have is that we don't know those dates yet because they have not been confirmed. But if we want to be just one step ahead and say, okay, if we have a resubmission date, what date do we think is manageable to mark in time for a future, the next round of considering marks in terms of progression following a resubmission? And the 7th of August seems to be a reasonable date.
I thought it was the 6th.
Well, yes.
Only because the 6th is a Thursday. And
oh, yes, beg your pardon. Yes, I have 7th down here for some reason. Beg your pardon. Yes, 6th. All right. I shouldn't forget that date. Anyway, 6th of August. Okay. It's just my wedding anniversary, that's all. I just have to remember that date. Okay.
Maybe that's why you changed it to the 7th.
Yeah, maybe that's why. So, subconsciously, I was hoping for the 7th. No, 6th of August. So that's a Thursday. And that would allow for resubmissions not being on a Friday. Okay.
And then the post date for that would be the 27th of August.
Yes. Noted it down here somewhere. Yes. Is that okay for everyone? And then we need to have an exam board for that. Confirmed. So at the moment, what we've been dealing with, because of all the things that have been going on, is a delay, as you can see, in confirmation of dates for exam boards and resubmission, resit boards, and so on, and awards and progression boards. So all of these, you know, have been affected by changes that we've all been subjected to with all that's been going on. Are there any queries in terms of what's been said so far? Because I think that covers most all of what was there in terms of items to discuss for marking, moderation, and exam boards. That's part one.
I have just a quick clarification. So
Sure.
those submissions for the mid-circs will not go for the pre-board. Is that what I understood?
So
because
no, it's understanding education. That's the only one that's not going to the pre-board for level 4.
Oh no, I think she's asking, so for mid-circs, all the mid-circs that are coming in late, we're not expecting them to go to the level 4 boards because you won't have enough time to mark them.
Yeah,
we're expecting them for the level 5 pre-boards and level 5 exam boards.
Well, that's going to be very nice for our external examiners, isn't it? Because we'll have a nice batch of level 4 mixed in with level 5. But anyway,
okay, thank you.
Yeah, that'll be what it is. Yeah, I mean, when push comes to shove, unfortunately, even under normal circumstances, we have found ourselves having to mark with a much tighter turnaround time because of the date of submissions that students have submitted their work and trying to get it in time for exam boards. And I suppose in some ways the level 4 is fortunate that we have the staggered approach because we could take it to level 5. With the level 5 and 6s, then we don't have that as much. It would have to go to a resubmission board. Certainly this is something we were discussing because we have got 1 or 2 students who've applied for extensions or deferrals. If you defer, you're deferring to the next exam board, and so that will affect graduation prospects. even if graduation is going to be first confirmed and they'll get the certificates in the post and the ceremony is postponed. But still there is an impact in terms of the date of confirmation of the graduation, as it were. Melissa, your hand went up.
Oh, thanks, Mona. Early on in the semester, I think Sarah had mentioned some help for marking with the turnaround, the shift from the 20 to 15 days. Do we know if we get an update on that?
Well, I think the main thing is if you already have anticipated some issues because of your workload prior to COVID, then that would have been a conversation you would have had with Sue and Sarah, and those arrangements would have been put in place. If, however, subsequently that there are things that have happened as a result of the context that we're in, I think it's something to flag up if you know that you won't be able to do the marking and the turnaround time because of circumstances that were not there previously but have subsequently come up, if that makes sense. I would certainly suggest that you flag that up with Sue and Sarah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And please make sure that if there are any issues, I mean, if you say, for example, God forbid, but say, for example, you're not well and you can't get the marking done, please do flag that up with someone, to the module convener or to the head of year. And then that way, that's a sort of, then we'd have to put in a contingency plan as an emergency, right? And we'd have to support and do what we need to make sure we can get the marks in time. It happens, but hopefully everyone will stay healthy and we'll get through the process as smoothly as possible. But what I wouldn't want is for someone to not feel that they're managing very well, and then eventually it will come out of the wash, as it were, and you don't want to sort of, if there are ways we can kind of cover in terms of contingencies that are necessary, then we need to know about that. So do CC me in if there's an emergency, or if you need something that needs some attention from someone. Georgia, go on.
Oh, yeah, I was just clicked in my head. So dissertation, the post date would be the 20th of June. So this would be, it wouldn't be in, it'd have to go through a board, so it would miss the level 5 and 6 exam boards, the dissertation, and it missed the AMP.
Not necessarily, Georgia. I think the thing was, we said that confirmation of marks on the 12th ideally, and then you will be pulling out however you describe it, the marks, exporting them onto the board reports that we need for the exam board. But I think if the 20th is the post date.
No, sorry, it's the 24th. The 24th of June is the post date.
24th. Yeah, that does sort of.
Hold on, I'm trying to, hold on, 1, 2.
That doesn't help really, does it?
It might be.
The dissertation still has 20 days turnaround, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Sorry, I've got so many things open on my screen that if you're counting the days, I'm quite happy for you to count the days. Actually,
no, the dissertation, the first lot, if they get it in on time, it should be okay.
Yeah, it's the ones with the extensions that we're saying that if they're too, if it's too far gone, then we can't get them. And that's something to take up with Kelly.
Yeah, I was asking, because these marks do have to go through a board. So what board would they go through? Would they go through the resubmission board? Or would they just be out loud boards in between the resit boards? I think this is.
Well, we can look at that in terms of sort of seeing the days that we've got and confirming. I can confirm it later with everyone if you want. But I think Kelly and when we sit together tomorrow and look at the dates, I think that should be important. to make sure that we're covered. I know from past experiences, other colleagues do as well. There have been times with MIT-Circs when you have much less than 20 days to turn something around, to get it through to the exam boards. But if the MIT-Circs are 2 weeks, then we do our level best, depending on how the days figure, to get it in time. If it's beyond that, then, you know, they've missed that exam board, it goes to the next one.
But is this a problem for students who are applying for PGCEs and things?
Yeah, I think there will be. I mean, I think the problem with the whole thing about MIT-Circs and applying for deferrals is if they defer, certainly if they defer, they've deferred to the next exam board. And if their MIT-Circs are 2 weeks, we could try to squeeze it in for the exam board. But if it's more than 2 weeks, because usually it's a maximum of 2 weeks, right, for a MIT-Circs, so they shouldn't, in theory, get more than 2 weeks for an extension. So with an extension, we should be able to do something to turn it around, even though it's putting pressure on us in terms of getting the marking done. And that's where we may have to see what it's like, what the conditions are like. If there's too many of them, then we need to think about a contingency of asking for support, possibly, if that's at all possible. It really does depend on the numbers of MIT-Circs, so we need to look at that report and see, certainly for dissertations. So I think that's something, Shirley's not here, but I'll have a look at that and see what it looks like in numbers. I think, Georgie, you gave us a nominal number of something like 44 who've applied for MIT-Circs. And if those MIT-Circs are all extensions, we're looking at 2 week extensions. Some of them might be deferrals.
Yes, some have deferred.
And that means they won't graduate in time for PGCE. So, I mean, that's their decision really, but maybe if we know that our students have deferred, we need to let them know that. And they can, of course, submit before if they feel that they, you know, if they've applied for a deferral but they feel that they can submit in time for us to turn it around for the exam board, they can submit it in sooner. So if you see you've got a dissertation student who's deferred, let me go through the dissertations. That's something I'll pick up on. All right, I'll go through that because Shirley's not here. So I'll go through the dissertations and I'll have a look at how many have actually deferred. And maybe Georgie, you and I can sort of just make sure that we've got our numbers in alignment so that I can then write to those that have deferred.
Is it, if you do, Mona, write to them, I think it would be really important for them to know that if they do submit early, they're going to have to alert us to that, because I'm sure we're not going to all check the inbox every day just in case somebody happens to have uploaded something. No. And if they do, you know, because I've had a couple of pieces of work where students just submitted late, but it was early for the resubmission, and then they're like, oh, where's the feedback? But it's been there for a week, I didn't know. So we need to know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the difficulty we've got this time around is we've been urging all the students to submit on time to help avoid a big swamp of assignments coming in late, and trying to encourage students to do their best to submit. And what we have tried to do is avoid talking about MIT-Circs too soon in the event that it might sort of distract and make some students think they ought to submit for MIT-Circs when they might be able to be in a good position to submit on time. But I think as we're nearing the 21st, that it's worth making sure that the students know about that. So I'll do that. Emily, your hand went up.
Hi, Emily. Yes, just wanted to check with the deferrals. Would that be the same for the other year 3 modules as well as the dissertation? Yeah. So if they defer, they can't graduate.
Yeah, well, what they're effectively doing, and I think in terms of deferrals, if it's not clear on the documentation when they're applying for MIT-Circs, we need to make them aware.
Mona,
yes, go on, Georgia.
So I just want to say, when I reply to students to let them know that their deferral's been approved, well, and a recommendation has been made to approve it, at the bottom it does say that this may affect your graduation. It may impact your graduation, so they are aware when they get a response for deferrals.
All right, so they should be aware, but I think we need to remind them. Yeah, I think so, because early on we've tried to avoid talking about MITCircs in too much depth with students. I think now is a good time to actually say, if you have applied, then just be aware of letting people know, letting tutors know. We do ask students to do that anyway, that if they've applied for MITCircs, to do a sort of courtesy email to the tutor to let them know. Given this last 2 months, lots of information coming back and forth, it's, you know, you just wonder if too much email communication will mean that students won't register things that you ask them to do. But I think it's a fair point to try and get them to think about their deferrals and maybe submit earlier if they can, certainly if they want to graduate early or on time for PGC applications. Yeah. Okay, are there any other questions? I don't see anything in the chat, so if you are happy, then we can move to part 2. If you are happier, so Samson, I don't know, Orsa, if you have any questions that follow on and you want to ask outside of the meeting, then I'm more than happy to respond.
I think it might be a good idea with a 5-minute chat with you another day, just to clarify some things that would bore the other one.
That's certainly fine. Yeah, do drop me an email and we can have a meeting separately. That's perfectly fine. Samson, are you okay?
Wrote in the chat.
Oh, is he writing in the chat? Sorry. Okay, sure. Thank you. Right. Oh, hi, Samson. Nice to see you. Okay. You're on mute. Let me unmute you. Sorry. If you're speaking, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I have unmuted it myself.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you. How is everyone?
I think we're just hanging in there, aren't we? We're just about okay.
Yeah, that's
we
it.
look fine, but I think everyone looks fine. Those that I can see anyway. But are there any other questions about marking, moderation, or anything like that? Thank you for all. Go on.
I
Sorry.
think it's okay so far, but if there is any more question, I'll probably send you an email.
Okay, super, super, absolutely. Thank you very much for all your support, and I appreciate sometimes, you know, when you're sort of not always in or seeing everybody, you know, picking up all this information in one swoop is quite a lot to take on board. But thank you for hanging in there, and if there are queries, then yes, please do email. Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, so the next part of this meeting really is about changes that are in place for module selection for the autumn, moving forward for
can
next
I leave
year.
now?
So if you would like to leave, you're
Yeah,
more than welcome to leave this meeting at this stage. And then for those colleagues who are teaching modules for next year, if you would like to hang on. So thank you so much, Samson, for joining us. Also, if you want to go, Lisa, if you want to go, you're more than welcome to leave at this point. It's perfectly all right. So teaching for next year is, nothing has been announced to students yet. Sally and I, as you know, we work with early childhood because we have combined honours students. So Sally and I are in conversation as PCs of the program in terms of how this is going to be communicated to students, and we're still waiting. So I have a meeting with Sally following this meeting, just for you to know that we think it's important to just prep something for students in case we are asked to send something out, and that it sort of, you know, the message is clear for students to avoid too much confusion and anxiety amongst students. What I'm leading to is a 3-term teaching. Given the COVID situation, what has happened is I sent a document around for everyone because I was asked to, along with Sally, to highlight modules that would be taught in the summer to balance out the teaching, but also to balance out the learning experience for students across 3 terms. So this really does impact really year 1 and year 2, and the optional modules for year 2. So atypical, social, emotional, learning beyond the classroom. We'll be having a group in the spring in some cases and summer. If it would help for me to bring that document up for you to view, I will certainly do that. At the moment, I mean, okay, I'm not going to get into a discussion in terms of what the VC has been saying, but obviously we're planning things as we're moving along in sort of a kind of a territory which hasn't had much time to prepare for or plan for. But I think given the circumstances and given the time constraints, that we're doing the best that we possibly can to try to allow for remote teaching. So autumn will be predominantly remote teaching as far as we know. I know the Vice Chancellor sent something out today just about 15 minutes or 10 minutes before this meeting, and I've skimmed it, so I have to digest it further. But I'm sure whether we're on-site or off-site, the idea is that we're starting in the autumn, that we have a 2-week induction. We can talk about that at another meeting. And then we have an autumn start, which will predominantly be remote teaching. And in terms of VLs, we don't know, but certainly in terms of module conveners, then what I'm proposing is that the document that I was sharing with colleagues for timetabling for next year, that also is another whole bag of things that I have forwarded all that on to Janet, but as you can imagine, everything now is sort of being rethought through, reviewed in terms of rooms and how to teach with social distancing if on site and so forth, and how to accommodate for all of that. So there's no further details in terms of timetabling that I can share with you. What I was proposing for you today is in terms of teaching from the team with expressions of interest for modules. We can use the modules that I've listed for the timetabling, if that makes sense, and I will be happy to circulate that or give you the link. And you can please populate the column where it says other comments, and I've adapted the form. I'm going to try to see what I can find while we're doing this. Right, I can try and share this with you if you can bear with me. Right, there were some dates, Carrie, sorry, before I go to Sue, I see you've got a point about PowerPoints with voiceovers. That would be the modules for next year. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it's
So-
a late comeback.
Right, sorry. So I'll just answer that and then come back to Carrie's point. So Sue, we did have slides which Melissa and Shirley coordinated with everyone, and those are already up on Moodle. Students are already writing to module conveners about next year and how to prepare for the assessment. That's another bit of the conversation we'll have today. So I'm going to try and push on for that discussion shortly. But that's all up on Moodle. So there's no change in terms of the modules and what's there on the PowerPoints available to
Sorry,
students.
but I think you're talking at cross purposes. If
Am
I
I?
understand it right, I think Sue is referring to how we'll be teaching in the autumn, and I think you're referring to
Oh,
module
I'm so
selection.
sorry. I
but I
moved
might
on
be
to
wrong
module
about that.
selection. Sorry. Thank you, Carrie. Sue, have I got it wrong?
Sorry. Yes, sorry. I was referring to how teaching will happen.
Okay, so teaching. Okay, I'm so sorry. Gosh, I think I'm having a bit of a muddle. Right. So excuse me. Right. So in terms of teaching, there are two things I'm trying to say here. One is that there are changes that we have had to make that we've shared, and module selection details have been shared with students. And we now have to alert students, that was what I was trying to say earlier, about these changes, because students do not know until they open up Allocator that modules will be available in the summer. And that's for year 2, the optional modules. They don't know about that. So we're quite anxious, Sally and I, to make sure that students have that information without having the sort of a big reveal on the 20th, which is tomorrow, and finding out that all things are, you know, change again. So that's something that I'm trying to address. And just a reminder, recap, that we are teaching now across 3 terms. Before getting on to how we teach, the form that I wanted to share with you is just the form that I had shared with colleagues about, let me see if I can share it quickly, about the timetable, right? And I hope you can see this, it's framing it, so I'm assuming you are. So for the moment, I'm not making any changes to who module convenes, okay? So please don't tweak with that. But in the final column, if you are on the team and you would like to express an interest to help with one of these modules to support with teaching for next year, then that gives me some information to feed back up or sideways to whichever way, to help in terms of workloads and teaching for next year. That was my point in trying to flag this up, because I appreciate some colleagues have already been in touch expressing interest, but I think it would be very helpful, if we don't mind, to put that in the one document there. It may mean that you might not be teaching that, but at least if your name is in the pool, then we at least know who would be happy to be called upon to support. And I think that's one way to help colleagues in terms of, you know, some things that they might consider supporting that they hadn't done before but might have an interest in. And for us, certainly, in thinking if there are gaps, who we can perhaps ask that has already expressed an interest, and that certainly would save some time. So that was my purpose for showing this document and asking to use it to help with the process. If you would also want to have a conversation about possibilities, then I'm certainly happy for you to email me and have conversations that I can filter back up, and in whichever way that helps. But this is also a key way that we can help the process, I think. Okay. So yes, so teaching for next year soon. So if I get to that, and then the dates. We had a school committee meeting, I recall, where Kelly shared some dates. And I think that those dates have not been confirmed with everybody. The calendar has not been confirmed, but I certainly saw 2 weeks of induction and the first week of October as being the first week of teaching from my memory, but I will just try and see if I've noted it down and check with Kelly. And at this time, at moment in time, I think Kelly is just, well, inundated back and forth between registry and, you know, academic services and all sorts of academic office details for dates. So it's all kind of happening at once. But I imagine what I'd like to think is that we've had this experience of Zoom where we can use those experiences in terms of thinking of our modules, of how we're teaching them. Yesterday I was at a PC forum, and certainly some of the concerns that PCs across the university have been expressing is the need for knowing the softwares that are compatible and supported, and where training might be available. So we're trying to squeeze in as many requests and as much support that we can get. Panopto seems to be the one that Moodle supports. Joe was saying something about Microsoft Teams and Blackboard on Moodle. Blackboard is supported on Moodle. Zoom is not supported by Moodle. That doesn't mean to say I think we have to really just keep our, I'll try and give you as much information as I hear it, as and when, if I can. If not, I'm sure there'll be something that will be coming out from the LTU most likely in terms of what discussions are leading to and pointing to. Yes, I certainly think YouTube worked best for just exporting Zoom recordings and then putting up links for students. That certainly was helpful. But yeah, so at the moment, what seems to be supported again is Blackboard. I think there's a bit more to what it's called, but that's what I remember, Blackboard something anyway, but Blackboard, Microsoft Teams. There are some reservations about Microsoft Teams, but that's something that the university is looking into. So as we're trying to get our heads around our teaching and thinking how we could do that remotely, I know that LTEU and Moodle e-learning services are all working on looking at the different platforms to help. I agree with Anthony that if there's something we can all use, oh no, I agree with Carrie, yeah, and Anthony, that if there is something we can all use, that would be very helpful. At least that way we can also get the same support as well. But I don't seem to have more clarity in terms of the definitive kind of platforms that we can all be using at the same time, other than those that I've already mentioned. I've used Microsoft Teams outside of uni, and I found it quite constraining because you can't see everyone like you can in Zoom. And so there are different ways that you have to adapt, of course, to each kind of program. So
sorry, Muna, can I just ask a question there?
Yeah.
My chat has frozen, so I can't type a question in.
Oh,
yes,
go ahead, please.
With YouTube and going online, there's lots of copyright issues which we're finding in primary ed.
Yeah.
Noor, I've forgotten his surname now. He's very good on helping out. That's
yes.
all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to let you know.
He's been very helpful. I think there are some issues with YouTube in terms of having to make things public in order for students to have access to them in the recordings. And we've all been, thank you Lisa for the offer. We've all been teaching on Zoom and recording Zoom sessions with students. And because of the size of the file, you end up exporting it to YouTube and then putting the YouTube link in. And right. As you say, Sue, there are some issues there that have cropped up. So I think this is something we're really going to have to turn to the LTEU to help, and e-learning services. Yes, agreed, breakout groups. And that's certainly something in terms of wanting group, okay, so seminars, situs, if you want to have breakout groups to discuss things, that is something. There are all sorts of issues with remote teaching and students' access, of course, to having the resources and facilities to support remote teaching for them. And that has been part of the ongoing discussion with PCs as well, is that we have students who, in this period of time with their assignments, have struggled. So that is something that is important too. The thing I was going to flag up in this meeting with all module conveners is, one thing we cannot have for the autumn and moving forward, given that we are remote teaching, is our assessments need to be looked at again, particularly group presentations and exams. So already those conversations are being had, that we need to make some minor modifications to modules where there are group presentations and where there are exams. And I would invite module conveners also to have a look at their modules again in terms of their assessments, and think about any minor mods that would help us to ensure that the remote teaching and teaching of modules for next year avoid any possible friction or tensions in terms of how students can optimize their chances of doing well in the modules. Minor mods, the date is in June, but our next is 16th of June when they have to be finished and submitted by. And the Learning and Teaching Quality Group meet on the 27th of May. So Sarah has asked, I see a couple of hands already have gone up, so I've noted. Thank you for your patience, but I just want to make sure I get these dates in. That the 27th of May is when the Learning LTQG meet, And the final date for submissions of minor mods will be 16th of June. So short window, but maybe this is an opportunity for us as module conveners to have a look at assessments again and think about where we can make changes to help support remote teaching. Carrie, your hand went up, and Richard, so over to you. Carrie, did you want to say? No, you okay. Richard?
Thanks, Muna. Can I advocate the continuation of group presentations in some shape or form? I just want to talk very quickly about research methods and just a couple of general observations that from normal to virtual system of group presentations, it tended to work, I thought, quite well. When you consider the movements that we've made from normal to virtual practice, I think our students in year 2 coped remarkably well with it. Again, it wasn't perfect, but I still thought it was good. And I think even now, even more so now, I think group presentations are a transferable skill, and I'd like that point passed up into that meeting that's taken place. I would like to see group presentations persevered with rather than dropped. I'm not going to suggest that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I think, again, that we've got to think very seriously about keeping group presentations from personal experience, but also exams as well. I think we've been praised by our external examiners for the breadth of our assessments. And I think if we keep group presentations in that exam in year 1 and year 2, despite how hard and how many complaints we get from our students, I think it provides balance and justifies certainly HE4 and HE5. In my opinion, it's important to keep the exam there, even if it's one question in 1 hour. Thanks, Muna.
Okay, Richard, I know what you're doing, and I appreciate what you're doing in saying these things and raising it. I think what I will say is that in conversations had with Sue and Sarah, we're very mindful of the fact that we don't want to compromise the range of assessments, but I think this is more a logistical reason rather than a reason of wanting to do away with exams for all time or group presentations for all time. I think what we found is that we want to minimize the risk of encountering difficulties with assessments because of teaching remotely. And I think that is the issue, really, rather than saying that there isn't any worth or value in doing things as we've been trying to explore. I see Carrie, yes? Okay, so Carrie's comment there is helpful. But I think in terms of the short term, we certainly need to look at our assessments and think about minor modifications just to make sure that, we can move into the autumn and spring with a program that is delivering assessments in a way that is manageable for students, given the the way that remote teaching presents itself. We haven't had time to sort of go online completely, and we're not an online university, so we're not trying to say that we are. But I think the logistics of trying to do group presentations from year 1 and year 2, I'm happy to pass on that information, but in my mind, this is just a measure that we're doing because of remote teaching.
Just a very quick point. Sorry, Wolfgang.
Go ahead.
Point.
Who's going to go first, Wolfgang or Richard?
Richard, let Richard go first.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Just a sentence. I mean, Emily has just raised an interesting comment there on text, on chat text.
Okay.
Just another general observation. I had more issues, interestingly, with individual presentations on multiculturalism and education than I did for research methods group presentations in year 2. Wolfgang.
And just to back up Richard, I mean, I support what he said about year 2. And prior to this meeting, Melissa and I had a meeting where we just shared our experiences with presentation year 1, year 2, and it sounds like year 1 as well. And I know some people have said, this is a group we're a little bit worried about and how they will do. in year 2, even though they seem to have done better than expected with the presentation format. So now it seems like we have 1, 2, 3. We have evidence from all 3 years in favor or supporting the presentation format. That may be worthwhile to report,
Okay.
to pass on.
I think it might be helpful before I ask. I see Sue's written something there in the comments, as has Emily. But Carrie, before you say something, can I just say, if you have had a meeting about presentations, could you put this down for me in an email? Could you just, you know, together, if you could put a document together about the experiences of the presentations and your views about how its delivery has gone, and in terms of remote teaching, what you think the strengths would be. And I'd be more than happy to look that over, and then in discussion with others, if there are ways in which we could do something that supports students, I don't see why we shouldn't look at it. But I do think we need to share that. So please do share that with me, and then I can at least have a look and see what we might be able to consider in the short time that we have moving forward. Okay. Richard, is your hand still up, or is it a new point? Because I'd like to go to Carrie, who's next in line. Is your okay? So Carrie, your hand is up.
Yes, no, I just saw Richard say something, but he was muted.
I
so I
can't
wasn't sure.
hear. So yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to say it's great that people have been submitting their group presentations successfully, but I understand, I understand from the research that there's quite a difference between groups that are working together for part of the year and then they've completed their work in the virtual context, whereas we may be starting with groups that have never met face-to-face or had any group sessions, and then expecting them to do group work is a slightly different requirement. It's not to say it wouldn't work, it may work even better actually,
Yeah.
but there's a difference there, and I'm a bit sorry, it looks like the learning and teaching, the assessment and feedback working group is not going to continue. Certainly I have no hours to do it anymore, and so I'm not quite sure what will be. There must be a platform somewhere for people to get together and collate this information and put it forward, but I don't know, with my workload I've got a lot more teaching, so I don't have any hours for any of the projects I've been working on for the past few years now, as far as I know. It just keeps
Can I suggest
changing.
something then? If it's, I mean, I know this is a team effort, right? So taking on board what everyone is saying, could we have a subgroup looking at this in the team?
Can I just say, so the volunteers who were going to look at it were Sally Howe and a couple of people on her team who had been doing group assessment, and there were some problems with the group assessment, so they've been working about how to resolve them. But also Ali Murray has had a lot of experience of virtual group activities as well as face-to-face ones, so they were already really keen to look into these things, and
I'll touch
Childhood have been doing the
yeah.
patchwork texts for a long time, which is group work that needs to be presented. So there are already people doing it. I'm not trying to start. If anybody wants to set up a working group and go ahead and look at it,
I don't necessarily
that would
mean.
be
I mean,
great.
it's a pity that the assessment working group is sort of in limbo at the moment. But
yes, I don't know what's happening with it.
But I think that sort of kind of explains a lot of things that seem to be in the air, as it were. But in the meantime, if Richard, yes, with Wolfgang and Melissa Wolfgang had met, and Emily, could you work together to put something to me about the group presentations? And then that's something that we can look at separately. I do think there is something to be said, Richard, about presentations that are longer than, say, 5 minutes. Because with the longer presentations, you're then dealing with audios and presentations that have files that are large files. And then we've got the encounters that we have with e-learning services and NOR trying to support students. I think that's why we want to try and see what are the best ways of doing these assessments so that students don't feel, and it's not just looking at a particular module at the moment, but generally speaking, so that they don't feel kind of scuppered by the technology. You know, that's the issue. And I take on board all the strengths that we've had and all the work that's gone into assessment with presentations and project-based work.
What I can do, Muna, is that there's a research Zoom team meeting later this afternoon, so I can ask colleagues on that group what their thoughts are. I mean, I can just get a side of a
research methods.
Yeah, but that's not the issue. I can contact Emily and Melissa as well to ask their opinions too. I can even talk to a few students about what worked and what didn't. I mean, what do you want, Muna? Do you want?
Well, I think just in terms of colleagues for now, because I think it's always good to have student input, but for the purpose of our tasks, I think it would be good to know what you're claiming, were the strengths of the experience of doing this remotely. That's the thing. So and then I would look at that.
Do you want me to create a discussion document for the team, or do you just want a one-sided?
Yeah, that's fine. If you can start with those of you who've been doing group presentations and the discussions that you've had.
Is there any other group presentations that we've missed, or I've missed so far, that I might need to contact? Just people that are doing group presentations on the undergraduate program.
I think that's covering it, isn't it? Melissa and Wolfgang. I don't think there are any other group presentations.
Okay, I can do that.
Developmental phases, Carolina.
Developmental phases is doing paired presentations, but I thought of transforming that into a poster because the task is quite straightforward. So
another poster. Okay, good. That's good. Excellent. Okay.
I mean, instead of being paired work, I will ask them to do it individually. Just choose an activity, and I can discuss that with Bunty and Arif. This is just an idea that I had. But I'll be happy to switch that for a poster. No problem with that.
Okay, that's great. So I think the group presentations that we have, excuse me, are the ones that we've identified so far. But if module conveners can look at the assessments and think about the experiences that we've had with remote teaching moving forward, if there is anything that you anticipate that could be tweaked maybe to help, then please consider that and run that by me. And Melissa, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Hi, just quickly though, Wolfgang and I know we'll cover this with Richard, but just as I have everyone here, don't be too discouraged, because Wolfgang and I found that, the concerns that students raise seem to be normal concerns that they would raise anyway with presentations. But I just wanted to flag two things of encouragement. One, online presentations are really quick to mark. And I did my entire group from 2 p.m. when they submitted till 9 p.m. and I was done and second marked as well. So I think there is merit to it for us, but also secondly, reading some of the comments that I've been, reading ahead, students gain something with the group presentations that even though they don't like doing it, there is merit to them negotiating with each other. And the hardest thing was for them to just get familiar with the software. So I would say, please, if you do have something, don't chuck it away because it might be a nightmare to manage. My colleagues may agree, but I just wanted to put that out there since everyone's here.
No, that's a very good point. And I think if you guys working together can put down all the positives from the experience and some of the things in terms of, possible thoughts of in terms of where a student has difficulty with the technology, what would be the contingency there, to reassure students how, if we can have that sort of encapsulated, then that is certainly something to present and make a case for. Right, and I think it's worthy to explore it. If you have, if you all have the will to work together, the four of you, then that would be brilliant, and it would be really helpful, because then it will also help us to review things in terms of the program moving forward with the new year one. and any minor mods that we might want to. This is probably an opportunity too, also to review what we've got there and say, actually, I wouldn't mind tweaking it a little bit. You know, at this moment in time, it's very helpful to have that opportunity to do that as well. But yeah, I take the positives. I think it's always good to share the positives, and then maybe that also can support us. Okay. Richard is offering a Zoom meeting for those involved with group presentations. So that's great. If you want me to be there too, I'm happy to support. Or if you guys want to have a chat amongst yourselves and then put something together, that's perfect. Whichever way helps. I'm happy with that. Thank you so much. Thank you. That's really, really helpful. And there might be a way of sort of really exploring what's there, it's what practice we've had and what we can use from that. Okay. Anything else on teaching? Are we okay to move on to any other items? One I have from the externals. External examiners I've contacted, I've sent my response from the program to them. They have duly noted our responses. I think I shared that with you already in an email to everyone. Also, for next year, we were looking at new externals. I've already approached the 2 people that we had mentioned in our last meeting. And I would just say, if there's anyone else that you can think of, please can you suggest to me possible externals to consider, because both of the external reviewers for our revalidation were very touched by the fact that we wanted to invite them to consider. One of them already has other external examining commitments. So I just don't want to find that we might be in a position where his eligibility, the eligibility of that person might be compromised, because there'll be just too much to be asking of a person to do if they've already got 2 other places that they're externally examining for. So if you can, please think of anyone as an external examiner, then please could you drop me a line, and I'd be very grateful. Otherwise, yeah, external examiners, Simon and Charlotte can make the exam boards, so it'll be virtual. The exam board is all going to be via Zoom. So module conveners will be attending or will be asked to attend. If you can't attend for any reason, please can you let me know and make sure that someone else can represent your module. But you should actually let the head of year know. But that will be all in the infogram that you get. So I'm just asking that you look at the infogram when you get it. If there's anything that's unclear, to flag it up. If it needs to be tweaked any further, then we can do that. And hopefully that will be a document we can use and help colleagues on the team as and when. Are there any other items that you want to raise? What is a what? Okay. Okay, okay, I thought that was yeah, shame it's all virtual, isn't it? We could at least partake in something together at some point, hopefully. What do you mean in terms of popular choice, Carrie?
Emily wrote before that there was an optional group presentation on the PGCE, so I was just wondering whether that was an option. If it was a choice, did students opt for it?
Hi, Carrie. Yes, so originally it was meant to be a group presentation, and then because of COVID-19, they had a choice of doing the group presentation or the essay. Interestingly, that on the geography cohort, I've got 27. Nearly all the males have chosen the presentation, and I would say it's about half and half.
Okay, well, that's something maybe to put into that, whatever document or outcome of your meeting, maybe that would be really helpful to include for us to have a look at and share with the LTQG. If we could get that together before the LTQG, I think that would be really helpful. So LTQG is on the 27th. So yeah, tight for time. But if you can in some way, that would be wonderful. And good on you for managing to get all that done. That's great. Okay. Any other items that you want to raise? Yep. Thank you very much, Carolina. On form, I asked Carolina to give me a heads up when we're getting close to the 2 p.m. So are we all happy so far? I know some of you might be writing to each other and some of you are smiling as we're discussing, and I know it can't be the topic of conversation that I'm raising. So I'm glad you're keeping cheerful. Sorry?
I was laughing not at you, Mona. I was laughing at my robot because he's trying to push the computer closed. So he's got his own agenda on the table.
Oh my goodness. I'm still trying to get my head around this idea of, yeah, the robot in your life. But there you go. It's amazing. But no, okay, that's fair enough. I mean, as long as you're all smiling and you're looking well, then I think that's the main thing, really, isn't it, at the end of the day? But thank you so much for bearing with this meeting and coping with all the information that's sort of, and my trying to share pages and so on. But hopefully that makes sense. And there's a recording here anyway. So thank you, everyone, each and every one of you, for everything. And amazing. I don't know, but obviously we're a good group because we're managing to keep our heads above the water and keep smiling. So well done to everybody and hang in there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mona.
Take care.
Thank you.
Try and enjoy some of the sunshine if you can at some point.
Before the marking starts. Thanks, Mona.
Yes. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mona. Bye.
Thank you, Anthony. Bye. Thanks, Helen.
Thanks, Mona. Bye.
Thanks, Bunty. Nice to see you. Take care. Bye.